about how many people had information stolen in that ransomware attack that actually shut down computers at 2 Connecticut hospital systems back in August. The attack was against Waterbury Health and Eastern Connecticut Health Network's parent company, Prospect Medical Holdings. And as Channel 3 Waterbury Bureau Chief Audrey Russo explains, the victims now number in the thousands.
Things are back to normal operationally at Waterbury Hospital. But as workers here and at Eastern Connecticut Health Network improve patients' physical health, they now worry if their own financial health is in jeopardy.
There are concerns about, data breach and their personal information.
The parent company of both Waterbury Health and ECHN, Prospect Medical Holdings, is assessing the damage of a ransomware attack that took computers down for weeks. When we asked how many people were affected by the hack, Prospect Medical Holdings' response didn't include a number. That information we had to get from the State Attorney General's office. The AG's office confirmed that 24,067 ECHN and Waterbury Health employees had their information accessed, a number that also includes dependents on an employee's insurance plan. The hack included names and social security numbers. And in addition, 63 Connecticut residents who were patients at Prospect's California-based hospital had their information taken, including 13 social security numbers stolen. Prospect Medical Holdings couldn't confirm whether patient data at the local hospitals was taken, saying in part, quote, "Our investigation is ongoing." Those who were impacted were contacted and offered credit monitoring, identity protection, and insurance reimbursement policies. Prospect Medical Holdings isn't just offering this out of the goodness of their heart. 2 out of the 3 of those services they're required to provide by state law.
Our members are a little bit concerned.
John Brady is the executive vice president of AFT-CT, a union covering healthcare workers at ECHN. He tells Channel 3 that the cyber attack is just one of several concerns that workers have about their jobs. Prospect Medical is looking to sell ECHN and Waterbury Health to Yale New Haven Health, a sale union members hope the state approves before Prospect gets more bad press.
Prospect is in financial difficulty and needs a sale.
In Waterbury, Audrey Russo, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.